I need to tell you about a laptop. Alex bought it for me for my birthday. Or that is how he presented it when he slid it across the table at dinner with 8 of his friends watching. I had asked for it. He had gotten it. That was the performance. And he was always good at those. What he did not tell his friends, what he would never have said out loud, was that he bought it for their reaction, not for my use. He expected it to sit in the spare room looking like evidence of his generosity. He was right that it would sit in the spare room. He was wrong about everything else. I opened that laptop at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, 8 months later, when I couldn't sleep and needed something to do with the feeling I had been carrying since the night he stood in our kitchen, phone in hand, completely unbothered, and said the 7 words that turned out to be the most expensive thing he ever said to me. You need me, you have nowhere to go.
He went back to his phone before I could answer. He wasn't waiting for an answer. That was the thing about Alex. He didn't ask questions. He made statements. And he had been making that particular statement in 100 different forms, in 100 different rooms, for 4 years. I want to tell you about the morning he walked into a boardroom thinking he was meeting a new investor and found my name on the acquisition documents instead. I want to tell you about his face in that moment. The specific quality of a man realizing too late that the math he was so certain about had been wrong for a very long time. But first, I need to tell you about the laptop. Because without the laptop, none of the rest of it happens. And Alex bought it. That is the part I need you to hold on to. Let me tell you what my marriage to Alex actually looked like. Not the version his friends saw. Not the version he posted. The accurate one. The house was beautiful. Of course it was. Alex understood that appearances were load-bearing. The furniture was expensive, the neighborhood was the right one, and we went to the kind of dinner parties where everyone complimented the wine and nobody said anything true.
From the outside, we looked like exactly what he wanted people to think we were. A successful man and his beautiful wife, building something together. We were not building anything together. Alex was building his image. I was part of the materials. He had a specific way of making sure I understood my position without ever saying it directly. When I mentioned a job listing I had seen, a marketing coordinator role at a firm I genuinely thought I could contribute to, he didn't say no. He looked up from his laptop with the particular patience of a man explaining something obvious to someone slow and said, "That's not really your space, is it? You'd be starting from scratch at your age. It would be embarrassing for you." He went back to his laptop before I finished processing it. When I asked about our finances, not the account he gave me access to, the actual finances, the investments and the property, and the full picture of what we had built together, he slid a single number across the breakfast table and said, "That's your monthly. You don't need to know the rest." And when I dressed for his colleague's dinner party, spent an hour getting ready, felt good, asked how I looked, he glanced up from his phone for exactly 1 second and said, "You look fine. Don't make it a thing."
Don't make it a thing. 4 words that contained an entire instruction manual. Don't want more than this. Don't ask for more than this. Don't be more than this. The air in our kitchen changed whenever his phone buzzed at night. I had learnt not to ask. I had learnt a lot of things in 4 years that I was never supposed to learn, including how to read a room I had been removed from, how to watch a man perform generosity for an audience, and understand exactly what the performance was covering. My mother Josephine had seen it before I married him. She had said it once, plainly, quietly, at the engagement dinner, while Alex was at the bar performing for his friends, and I was sitting across from her trying not to hear what she was saying. "Lisa, look at how he speaks to you when he thinks no one is watching." She never said it again. She kept the door open without announcing it was open. I didn't walk through it for 4 years because walking through it meant admitting she had been right at that engagement dinner while I was sitting there insisting she was wrong. So I stayed and I watched, and I learned the particular skill of a woman who has been told she has nothing, which is how to see everything. I was at one of his dinner parties the night I understood that I had almost disappeared completely. Alex was telling a story about a deal he had closed. Animated, generous with the details. The room angled toward him the way rooms always were. And someone asked him what I did. He smiled. He reached over and put his hand on mine. "She keeps me sane," he said. The table laughed. I laughed. And underneath the laugh was something that had been building for a long time, something that had been looking for a door and had not yet found one. It was about to find one.
My birthday dinner was at a restaurant Alex chose. I want to be precise about that detail because it matters. He chose the restaurant, he chose the guest list, he chose the table. Large, central, visible from the entrance so that everyone who walked in would see the party happening and understand that something celebratory was taking place and that the man at the head of it was the reason. There were 8 of his friends at that table. I want you to notice I said his friends, because that is what they were. The couples we socialized with were couples Alex had selected, cultivated, and maintained for reasons that had more to do with his professional network than with any genuine affection. I was present at those dinners the way the restaurant decor was present, necessary for atmosphere, not expected to have opinions about the menu. Halfway through the main course, Alex set down his fork, turned to me with the full warmth of a man who had been saving this moment and said, loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "So, what do you actually want for your birthday this year? Anything, whatever you want." The table went quiet in that particular way that means everyone is watching.
I had thought about it. I had genuinely thought about it, not as a performance, not as a trap, just as a woman who had been turning an idea over for months and finally had a reason to say it out loud. I wanted a laptop, a specific one. I had looked it up, I knew the model, I said it clearly. Alex smiled, not at me, at the table. "Done," he said, and he picked up his fork. The table reacted exactly the way he needed them to. What a husband. What a provider. Look at him. She asks, he delivers, no hesitation. I watched his face in the 2 seconds after the table reacted and I saw the calculation happen in real time. The laptop was giftable, it was photographable, it was the kind of purchase that photographed as generosity and cost him nothing in any currency he actually valued. He had already decided it would sit in the spare room. He ordered it that week. He presented it 3 days later at another dinner, same friends, same table, same restaurant, in a box with a ribbon. He handed it to me across the table while his friends watched, and I accepted it with the correct expression and said thank you, and meant it in a way he did not understand and would not understand for a very long time.
We went home. I put the laptop in the spare room. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and I thought about his face when the table reacted. That specific fraction of a second where the warmth dropped and the calculation showed through before the warmth came back. He bought it for them, not for me, which meant I could use it for me. I didn't open it that night. There was still something in me that was trying to perform contentment, trying to find the version of Alex that had existed in the first year before the erosion had fully set in. I spent 8 more months trying to find that version of him. I never found it, but I found something else entirely, and it was sitting in the spare room waiting for me. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I couldn't sleep. Alex was asleep. He slept the way men who are certain about everything sleep, completely, immediately, without apparent transition from awake to unconscious. His phone was face down on the nightstand the way it always was now. I had stopped looking at it 6 months ago, not because I had stopped noticing, but because I had run out of places to put what I found there. I got up. I didn't have a plan. I want to be clear about that because this story is not a story about a woman who woke up one night with a strategy fully formed. This is a story about a woman who couldn't sleep and needed somewhere to put the feeling and walked into the spare room because it was the only room in the house that felt like it belonged to neither of them yet. The laptop was on the desk where I had put it 8 months ago, still in the same position. I don't think Alex had registered that it had never moved. I opened it. The screen came on. I sat down. I opened the browser and typed something I had been thinking about without fully admitting I was thinking about it. Something about marketing, about how brands built audiences, about whether there was a skill in that direction that a person could learn from the beginning without a degree or a professional history or a husband who thought her space was limited. I found a free course, 12 modules. Introduction to Social Media Marketing. I clicked on the first video without expecting much. I watched it all the way through. Then I watched the second one, then the third. I want to tell you what that felt like because I think it matters. It felt like a door opening in a wall I had stopped believing had doors. It felt like the specific sensation of a mind being asked to do something it was built for. Something that required analysis and strategy and the ability to see patterns in how people responded to things. I had been doing a version of this for 4 years. Reading rooms, reading Alex, reading the gap between what people performed and what they actually were. Turns out, those were transferable skills. Who knew? The course had a community forum. I posted a question about content strategy at 1 a.m. By the time I checked the next morning, there was a response. Thorough, generous, the kind of answer that assumed the person asking was serious. The name attached to it was Nadia. We went back and forth for 3 days before she suggested moving to email because the conversation had outgrown the thread. She told me she ran a small content consultancy and had been in the industry for 6 years, and that I asked better questions than most people she had hired. I read that line 3 times. I want to tell you what it did to me to be told by someone who had no reason to perform generosity, who owed me nothing, that I was good at something. I did not sleep at all that Tuesday night. I opened the 4th module at 2 a.m. and the 5th at 3 a.m. and somewhere around 4 a.m. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark and thought about the fact that I had lived in this house for 4 years and this was the most alive I had felt inside it. What came on that Tuesday was not a plan. It was something more dangerous than a plan. It was the recognition that I was capable, actually, demonstrably, verifiably capable. And 3 weeks later, Alex said 7 words in our kitchen that turned that recognition into something I had not yet named, but was already beginning to build. It was a Thursday evening, and I was not looking for anything. I was standing in the kitchen waiting for water to boil, and his phone was on the counter, face up, and the notification came through while he was 3 feet away with his back turned. And I saw it the way you see something you are not meant to see. Completely, immediately, and with the specific clarity of information that cannot be unseen once it has entered you. I will not tell you what it said. I think you already know what it said. I raised my voice. Not screaming, just the particular elevation of a woman who has been holding something level for a very long time and has just been handed one thing too many. I said his name. I said what I had seen. I asked the question that deserved an answer. Alex turned around. He looked at me for a moment with an expression I had never quite seen on him before. Not guilt, not anger, not the performance of either. Just a flatness. The specific flatness of a man running a calculation he already knows the answer to, checking his math one final time before he states the result. Then he said it. You need me. You have nowhere to go. Not loudly, not cruelly. The way you state a fact about weather. The way you tell someone the train has already left. Flat and certain and completely unbothered by my presence in the room while he said it. Then he picked up his phone and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there for a moment, in the specific silence he left behind. The water was boiling. I turned off the stove. I did not make the tea. I walked to the spare room and I sat down at the desk and I opened the laptop and I did not cry. Because crying would have required me to feel something, and what I felt in that moment was not a feeling. It was a decision. Before that Thursday, I was learning a skill. After that Thursday, I'll explain the difference. The line between those two things is a Thursday evening in a kitchen and 7 words said the way you talk about weather. The following Saturday at dinner, Alex mentioned casually that he had let 2 people go at the company that week. He said they kept complicating his vision with unnecessary data. He said it the way you say you cleared out a drawer. Their names were Dara and Kwame. I filed it. I did not comment. I thought about what it meant that a man had just removed the 2 people in his company most capable of telling him when he was wrong. And I thought about the fact that a man who removes everyone capable of challenging him is not building something stronger. He is building something hollow.
And hollow things do not require force to bring down. They simply require patience and time, and someone who knows exactly where the fault line is. Let me show you 2 timelines running at the same time. My first retainer client came through Nadia, a wellness brand trying to build an audience from scratch, reasonable budget, clear brief, nobody currently doing the analytical work properly. Nadia sent them my portfolio. I had built the portfolio in 3 weeks from case studies and hypothetical campaigns constructed at 2 a.m. because I needed something to show, and I was not going to wait for permission to have something to show. The client signed within a week. The retainer of Modest? I did not care about Modest. I cared about the fact that it was mine, filed under a business name that contained no part of Alex's, paid to an account he had never seen, earned by work he did not know existed. The second client came from a cold pitch. I had identified a restaurant group whose social presence was inconsistent and whose engagement metrics suggested they were paying an agency that wasn't delivering. I wrote them a 3-page analysis of exactly what was wrong and exactly how I would fix it. They called me 2 days later. They signed the week after. That was the thing I kept finding. The bar was not as high as Alex had always implied it was. The bar was reachable. I just had to be willing to stand at it. Meanwhile, Alex signed a sponsorship deal with a lifestyle event company that put his name on 3 high-visibility activations across the city. His face was on banners, he was photographed at lunch parties, he posted about it with the particular energy of a man who has confused being seen with being successful. The deal cost his company's operational budget approximately 40% of its quarterly marketing allocation, the 40% that had previously gone toward client retention infrastructure. Dara and Kwame were gone. He had replaced them with Tevin and Bryce, 2 men with the specific skill of telling Alex what he wanted to hear, with just enough variation to make it feel like independent thought. Tevin and Bryce told him the sponsorship deal was visionary. They told him the client renewal numbers were a temporary adjustment. They told him the board's quietness was respect rather than concern. The board was not quiet out of respect. I know this because my analytics dashboard had Alex's company in it. 18% client retention declined over 2 years. Marketing spend redirected from retention to visibility. 2 key analytical roles vacated and not replaced with equivalent capability. The board of a company that looked healthy from the outside and was quietly, structurally, losing the ability to sustain itself. Nadia referred me to Raymond. He reviewed my financial documentation, the bank statements, the client contracts, the retainer agreements, all of it. And we met on a video call on a Thursday afternoon, while Alex was at a brand activation being photographed next to a promotional banner with his own name on it. Raymond looked at my documentation for a long moment. Then he said I was ready. Not almost ready, not getting there. Ready.
It was 2 a.m. by the time I finished the deck I was working on for my 7th client. I had 2 screens open. On the left, my agency dashboard. 7 clients, 3 proposals pending, analytics sharper than anything the market around me was producing. On the right, Alex's company's public filings, the retention numbers, the budget reallocation, the board minutes that said nothing and therefore said everything. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I looked at it for a moment. I did not name it yet, but I knew what it was going to become. I left on a Wednesday morning. 1 bag. The apartment was signed 3 months prior, paid in advance from the account he had never seen, furnished simply, completely, already home in a way the house had stopped being long before I decided to leave it. I walked through the house once before I called the car, not to look at what I was leaving, but to confirm I had taken nothing that was not mine. I had not. I left the furniture, the artwork, the kitchen appliances he had picked out and called our taste. I left the wedding photograph on the hallway wall because it belonged to the version of this story he was still telling himself, and I was done carrying props from someone else's performance. I left 1 envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a single line. Raymond's contact information is below. He is expecting a call from your attorney. Then I called the car. I walked out. I did not look back. Alex came home at 6 p.m. 12 missed calls before 7 p.m. Then texts, first confused, then demanding, then this specific escalation of a man who has never once calculated for an outcome he did not author. The capital letter arriving around 8 p.m., like a man discovering that volume works differently when there is no one in the room to receive it.
I let 4 days pass before I took his call. On the 4th day, I picked up. His voice was flat, controlled, the same voice he used when he slid a number across the breakfast table. "You built nothing. You are nothing without my name. Go ahead and try." I let it land completely. Then I said, "Okay," and I hung up. 3 weeks later, Raymond walked into the first divorce mediation session and placed my income documentation on the table. 2 years of client contracts, retainer agreements, bank statements from the account Alex had never seen, a business valuation that restructured every assumption Alex's divorce attorney had walked in with. His attorney went quiet in a way that good attorneys do not go quiet unless the ground has just shifted completely beneath them. Alex did not understand why yet, but what he did not know, what he could not have known sitting in that mediation room, was that the documentation on the table was not the thing he should have been worried about. The thing he should have been worried about was the folder on my desktop, the one I still had not named.
14 months after Wednesday morning, I named the folder. I had been watching Alex's company decline the way you watch a building that has been compromised at the foundation. Not collapsing dramatically, just settling wrong. The kind of wrong that only someone who understands load-bearing structures can identify before the walls show it. His board had been quiet for 8 months. His client renewal rate had dropped again. Tevin and Bryce were still telling him everything was visionary. When the acquisition firm reached out to me, I did not chase it. They found my agency through the restaurant group, who had found me through the cold pitch, who had found me through work that started on a laptop in a spare room. They were assembling a holding structure around 3 compatible companies. They named the third target. I recognized it immediately. I called Raymond. He was quiet in the way he was quiet when something required precision rather than speed. He said, "This is your decision entirely, but the numbers support it." I told them I was in. Alex had been told he was meeting a growth investor. The acquisition firm's approach was standard. Neutral language, forward-looking framing, nothing that would trigger a defensive response before the meeting. He was told to expect a conversation about expansion capital and new market reach. He was told to bring his vision documents. He dressed for it. He would have worn the charcoal suit, the one he wore to anything he considered important, the one that photographed well. He would have prepared talking points about legacy, about the company his father started, about his vision for the next 5 years, the vision that Tevin and Bryce had been validating for 18 months, while the retention numbers bled quietly in the background. He walked into the boardroom at 10 a.m. on a Thursday. He sat down. The documentation was placed in front of him. His eyes moved down the senior partner line and stopped. My name, not his last name, my name. The one I had filed 14 months ago in Raymond's office, while Alex was at a brand activation being photographed next to a banner. He looked up. There was nobody across the table yet. Just the documents, just the silence, just the specific stillness of a room that already knows what the person sitting in it is only now beginning to understand. I was not there. I was in a meeting across the city, at 10 a.m. with my 9th client, a brand relaunch I had been building a strategy for over 6 weeks. My phone was face down on the desk, not because I was hiding anything, because the meeting in front of me deserved my full attention. At 4 p.m., my acquisition firm representative called to confirm the terms were proceeding. I confirmed. I went back to my 5 p.m. That evening, I called Josephine. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "I know. You don't have to say it." She didn't say it. We talked for an hour about my sister's new apartment and the restaurant she had been meaning to try near her house and whether I was eating properly in my new city. She asked if I needed anything. I told her I had everything I needed. She said she knew that. She said she had always known that. We said goodnight. I set my phone down on the desk next to the laptop, the one that had been sitting in a spare room for 8 months before I opened it, the one Alex had bought for 8 friends at a birthday dinner in a restaurant he chose, the one that was never meant for me. I closed it, and I went to bed before midnight for the first time in 14 months, because the work was done, and I was already thinking about what came next. He said I had nowhere to go. He was right about where I was. He was completely wrong about where I was going. The most expensive mistake a man can make is handing a woman the tool that frees her, then turning his back before she learns how to use it. By the time he turns around, she won't be looking at him anymore. She'll already be in a meeting.